और आइए केंद्रीय मंत्री आर के सिंह इस समय प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस को संबोधित कर रहे हैं, सीधे रुक करते हैं।
चैलेंज इन एनर्जी was seen to be linked with the challenge to the climate change. And the emphasis was on energy transition. That emphasis remains. But now, another challenge has emerged. And that's the challenge of energy security. And suddenly, and there is also a challenge of supply chains. Suddenly you have many countries, developed countries, facing difficulties in terms of energy security. Disruptions were radical. Those disruptions have resulted in hardships for the poorer people or for the people with not enough income. The countries have had to intervene, have had to give subsidies. And so energy security has come center stage. We believe that it should always have been center stage. You can't talk about energy transition before you talk about access and security. Now, energy access is again been something which has been missing from the discourse with the past decade or decade and a half. If you will all recall, all the talk has been only about energy transition. But what about 600 or 800 million people around the world who do not have access to energy? Now, when you talk to those people about energy transition, for them it is meaningless. They just don't have access to energy. And they would rather get access by any means possible, whether it is fossil or non-fossil, doesn't matter to them. There is also a question of which India has been and all the developing world has been raising from time to time. And that is that the transition has to be in accordance with, has to be a just transition and in accordance with the economic situation and the development parameters of each country. Because there are developed countries whose peoples have reached a certain level of development. There are developing countries whose people still have to reach that level of development. So there will be differentiated responsibilities. The developing countries will need to be given space to develop. So when we talk about energy transition, now that has to be nuanced. First of all, we don't talk about only energy transition. That is how we see it, and that is what we shall discuss in the coming conferences. And this is something which I believe carries resonance throughout the world. As I had gone to preside over the meeting of the International Renewable Energy Agency in Abu Dhabi, and there also these discussions came up, also in Davos. So energy transition is important, absolutely, I have no doubt about it. And India is a leader in energy transition. Despite the fact that our per capita emissions are one-third, almost nearly one-third of the world average, we are a leader in energy transition. But we have to stare the reality in the face, and that is that access to energy for 600, 800 million people is something which the world has to take cognizance of and discuss. And energy security is again something which the world has to take cognizance of and discuss and mainstream in their discourse. Because when even developed countries came across the problem of availability of energy, they prioritized energy security before the question of transition. This is what the developed countries do. And this is what any country will do. Any country will first and foremost look at securing its energy supply. And only then you start, once your energy supplies are secure, only then you start thinking about transition. That okay, the energy should come from non-fossil sources, renewable sources, etc. So we are having this conference, and energy is a major part of the G20 discussions, and we are having this conference at a very critical juncture for the field of energy. We have been fortunate. We have been fortunate despite the fact that our demand has grown rapidly. It has grown in an unprecedented fashion. This year compared to last year, the demand is almost 10.5% higher. And compared to some months it was 12.5% higher than last year. Despite that, our supplies have been constant. Despite that, our energy prices have not gone through the roof, and we have been comfortable. So we have been fortunate. We have been fortunate, and we shall take steps to make sure that there is sufficient electricity available for whatever is the situation. But that apart, for the world, when you are discussing issues about energy for the world, these are the aspects which will be discussed, which we shall discuss. Supply chains are important, and security of supply chains has again come center stage. So access, energy security, and energy transit. Energy security includes, but in that order. Of course, we believe that they are complementary. In the sense that if you push energy transition, you are also so insulating yourself somewhat from supply chain disruptions, from energy security issues, because the nature of renewable energy is such that you set it up in your own country, the sun is everywhere, the wind is everywhere. So they are complementary in our view, in our country's view. For us, a million people without access. We have been championing the cause through the International Solar Alliance. It's time that the whole world lent its weight to this mission, which we have to address. So we look forward to a year of very fruitful discussions. As I said, these discussions are critical to setting the world discourse. These decisions are critical to setting the agenda. And as I said, we are fortunate that we are sharing it. But the basic concerns which are not only our concerns, but I believe the concerns of the world now, they will be discussed, debated. There are no immediate solutions to the energy sort of crisis which has gripped parts of the world. There are no immediate solutions. There are only long-term solutions. So the energy transition also will take time, but it will also have challenges. Energy transition. We will transition. We are transitioning. But if you expect developing countries to transition without access to technology, it won't happen. We can talk about it, but it won't happen. So the developing countries will need access to technology. If you talk about energy transition with the developing countries without access to finance, it won't happen. So of the global carbon dioxide load in any case has been contributed by the developed countries, developed economies in the process of their development. So the developing countries also need space to develop. We are developing, and at the same time we are, of course, a leader in energy transition. We are the only major economy whose energy transition is consonant with a sub-2 degree rise in global temperature. We are the only major economy. And even independent agencies, they categorize us as one of the top 5 economies, in energy transition. And of those top 5, we are the only major economy. So we are fine. Our pace will continue, while of course securing our supply chains. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your remarks.
Yeah.
Before we start questions, let me request you to kindly introduce yourself and your name of your organization before you ask the question. And you may raise your hands. The questions may kindly be brief, and only one question may be asked first.
Only one question per correspondent. Seems rather harsh. If we have time, we'll allow more questions. Initially. I don't address me. I've been she's the boss. You have to look at her and ask her.
Rishi from the business line.
Yeah, please.
Sir, you have spoken about supply chain security, and parallelly India is itself developing its supply chain through various incentives like PLIs and MSIPs. What is the sense that India wants to convey to the G20 nations when it comes to diversification of supply chains as well as security of supply chains?
No, the G20 and us, we are on one page in that. And we all agree that the supply chain has to be diversified. And the G20 sees India, the world sees India as a part of the solution. That, okay, if we build our capacities, that will lead to a diversification of the supply chain. So they look upon us as a country which is expected to take action to help diversify the supply chain. We are doing that. We are adding capacities, and that diversifies the supply chain, because apart from